Alright, how's it going, 7th graders? Right now I'm just going to do a quick podcast that goes a little bit over mass movement and the start of what we were doing with water erosion from today. Now, sorry if it's flashing right here when I open up the journal. For some reason, the program's been flashing on me lately. It'll go away in just a little bit, so just sit tight. Alright, so what we're going to be doing is we're going to be talking about mass movement, as I just said. And with mass movements, we're going to learn a little bit about how the Earth changes and what are some of the things that kind of contribute to that. Now, when we're dealing with mass movement, we're not dealing with things as large as plate tectonics particularly. We're dealing with slow erosion in some cases, sometimes faster erosion, that takes place on mountains, on hills, sometimes on plains, as we learned about with a dust bowl. Now, in mass movement, we were introduced to a few words. We already know all about erosion. Remember, that's the idea of breaking something down and carrying it away. So not just breaking it down, but and carrying it away. Also, when we break the stuff down, the stuff that we're carrying away, we talk about as sediment. And it needs to be broken down to a small enough size because if you think about it, it's the story I was telling you guys today in class was how we were standing out there in the ocean, me and my nephew, and he's 4, I'm old, I'm turning 26 tomorrow, so you get a 26-year-old and a 4-year-old, and he's a lot smaller than I am and a lot lighter. So when the waves were crashing in on us, I could stand at a certain point, and here I am smiling at the waves. I look weird. And then here's my little 4-year-old nephew, and he's standing here. And a wave that hits about that high, for me, it's not really going to do anything. I'm getting a little bit cold, but not too much. But at the same time, there was another wave that came up to my waist, and there's a pretty strong wave, and again, I got cold, but I really didn't go anywhere. Whereas my nephew, he got blasted. He got thrown so far back by that wave. And so you can see that the smaller and lighter something is, the easier it is to carry it away. And so that's why rock gets broken down to sediment, to small particles, before it can actually easily be taken away. Now, larger things can be taken away at times if you have enough gravity or enough force from water, enough force from wind. But for the most part, it needs to be broken down into sediment in order to be carried away. Now, that carrying it away part of erosion, so you're breaking it down, you carry it away and you put it somewhere. So there's that process of putting it down. It doesn't just carry it away and it disappears, but when you put it somewhere, you simply call that deposition. And again, you look at position, the position changes. Or, as some people want to see, it was deposit. So either way you want to look at that, it's changing the position or depositing it somewhere else. Now, all these different things can build up and break down things as large as mountains. Again, a mountain would take an enormous amount of time, but you get wind erosion. In some mountains, you get water erosion, working with gravity. You have gravity itself pulling the mountain down, trying to flatten it out. And all these things are working against the mountain and try and even out the space of the mountain. Now, as we learned with plate tectonics, is they try to go against that, and then they can run to places of each other and create new mountains. But this is erosion working against what the plate tectonics is trying to build. Now, when we're dealing with mass movement, we're going to run into 4 different types. We're going to run into mud flows. We're going to run into landslides. We run into slumps. And we also run into creeps. Now, if you need to know what these things are going to look like, you can either type it on Google. Be careful with this one. Type in landform creeps. Otherwise, you'll get a lot of people with really scary-looking mustaches. And this one, you'll just get the Indianapolis Colts this year. Now, if you look on page 68, 69, it goes over these different things. It shows mud flow is just when you get a lot of really fine sediment and a lot of water involved with it. You can get massive mud flows. Mud flows can also come along with landslides. And landslides are normally when you just get larger rock and they're sitting on the side of a steep slope and they just get pulled down by gravity. Slumps, again, it's gravity pulling down on it, and it can be quite quick. It just, you have a part that just breaks off and it slumps down again. It's like slumping your shoulders. It's not a landslide, anything like rocks come tumbling, but the whole thing itself just kind of slumps down. And you can have the creeps where it moves very slowly. It's not as dramatic, and it moves slow. And that's where you get the trees, and you can tell you have a slump if you have a tree that grows like this. Because it means that it used to be nice and flat in this way. The hill used to be like this, but then over time it kind of shifted over like that. So those are the ones that you're running into. Now let's just go over real quick some of the stuff that we covered today in class, and that's when we're dealing with water erosion. And again, you remember water can cause a lot of different landforms. We're going to talk about sinkholes more tomorrow, and it'll be some fun stuff. But the things that we covered today was we were talking a little about runoff. And remember, runoff is when you have water moving across land. So here's our land, and you have water moving across it. And as it moves across it, it takes stuff with it. It takes the little sediment that's light enough for it to take up and carry. Now, it sometimes will take bigger things. It just depends on how fast, how quickly, and how strong the current of the water is moving. But you call this runoff. And this is where you can have that deposition, where you're taking the sediment from here and you deposit somewhere else. And we're going to talk a little bit about deltas and things that come across from those kind of features. And so the last thing I want you to know about runoff is, remember, there's 5 factors that go into runoff. Number 1 is the amount of rain. How much rain is an area getting? If it gets a lot of rain, it's a lot more likely to be able to have a strong current. Number 2 is vegetation. Now vegetation, again, we know this, that plants, so here's our little plant, and there's going to be an ugly looking tree. It has roots that go deep into the ground and they hold the soil together. So all this soil will be held together very nice by these roots. Now, whereas this, because there's no roots holding in, have a lot higher chance of getting swept away. Number 3 is the type of soil. So what kind of soil are we dealing with? Are we dealing with soil that can easily absorb water? Are we dealing with something that's heavier? If you have gravel, you're going to need a lot more force of water to move that gravel versus if you have something more like sand or dirt, which dissolves very easily into water to be carried away. The 4th one is the shape of the land. Again, I talked about it in class. If you had one of your classmates saying to you, you live on a flat plain, saying, "Oh, look out." He comes to school yelling, screaming, "There's going to be a landslide today." Well, you just think that he's crazy, that he's an idiot because, yeah, sorry, bro, I don't know how gravity is going to force anything to move anywhere. But if you have something like this, you live on the edge of a mountain maybe, he comes telling you there's going to be a landslide, you're going to be kind of scared because gravity is going to pull that stuff down the mountain, could possibly run over your house. And the last factor is how people use the land. If we modify it too much, because sometimes when they're trying to build roadways, they need it to be steeper. So instead of something like this, they cut it down so it becomes even steeper. So that means gravity's going to be working even harder against that the thing sitting up here on the top of the mountain. Also, if you take all the vegetation away, then again you have nothing holding that soil together. And so you can have a lot of different problems. Or if you build your house up here, you're adding weight, which is forcing that mountain even harder. And those are some of those pictures and videos that we saw today. So that's just a little bit about runoff. Again, if you have any questions, make sure you email me. Make sure you're keeping up with these podcasts so you guys can do good on the test and on the final. And until next time, you guys take care.